"Pa! No!" Herman Lehman's scream cracked as an Apache arrow tore through his father's chest, blood gushing onto the Texas dirt, his body collapsing amid the roaring flames engulfing their village. The 11-year-old froze, watching neighbors hacked down, their screams drowned by war cries as Apache warriors torched homes and livestock. Stripped naked, Herman was flung onto a warrior's horse, his wrists bound, the acrid smoke stinging his eyes as his world burned to cinders. Only hours ago he'd been playing with his brother Willie, carefree under the morning sun. How had their peaceful day spiraled into this blood-soaked massacre? Herman Lehman, born in 1859, was a shy boy in Mason County, Texas, cherishing his mother's lullabies and trailing his brother Willie in their settler family's humble cabin. At 11, Apache raiders burned his village, killed his father, and kidnapped him, thrusting him into a brutal world. Over 9 years, he became Enda, an Apache warrior, then Monstrous, a Comanche fighter under Quanah Parker, forgetting his past. At 20, he returned to his white family, a stranger torn between the wild plains and the home he barely remembered, his life a struggle to reconcile the boy he was with, the warrior he became. The morning sun warmed the wheat field where 11-year-old Herman Lehman chased birds with his brother Willie and sister Caroline. Laughter rang out as he swung a stick, copying Willie's bold steps, while Caroline giggled, poking fun when he tripped over a root. Their mother's call drifted from the cabin, urging them to hurry, but the kids dawdled, tossing pebbles and joking. A sharp crack shattered the air, followed by a horse's scream. Herman dropped his stick, eyes wide, as black smoke rose over the village. Screams erupted, and Willie grabbed his arm, pulling him toward home. They ran, breath ragged, but stopped short when their father staggered on the porch, an Apache arrow buried in his chest. Blood soaked his shirt as he fell, choking out Herman's name. The boy's legs gave way, sobs catching in his throat as painted warriors stormed through, torches setting cabins ablaze. He reached for his father, but Willie yanked him back, yelling to run. Bare feet skidded in the dirt, Herman's gaze fixed on Pa's still body. A neighbor's wail cut through the chaos, and bodies fell under swinging tomahawks. Fear gripped him, but he bolted with Willie, dodging a warrior's club. Caroline's scream echoed behind, and he turned, heart sinking as she vanished in the smoke. He shouted her name, but Willie dragged him toward the trees, their only hope. Flames devoured the village, and Herman's world crumbled, his cries swallowed by the inferno. Smoke stung the eyes as Willie's grip tightened, dragging his younger brother through the chaos toward the forest's edge. Hoofbeats pounded closer, shaking the ground, and a towering Apache warrior, Carnavista, loomed on a black horse, his face smeared with red paint. The 11-year-old stumbled, knees scraping earth, and Willie hauled him up, shouting to keep going. Carnavista's club swung, slamming Willie's shoulder, sending him sprawling. A scream tore from the boy's throat as he dove for his brother, but Carnavista's hand seized his neck, hoisting him like a sack. Kicks and punches met air, until a slap cracked across his face, blood dripping from his lip. The warrior ripped off the boy's clothes, leaving him shivering, and tied his wrists with rawhide that cut into his skin. Flung across the horse's back, his stomach lurched as it galloped, the village's flames fading to a distant glow. He twisted, searching for Willie, but saw only smoke and scattered bodies. His chest heaved with sobs, certain Ma and Caroline were dead like Pa. Carnavista's sharp command silenced him, and a cloth was tied over his mouth, choking his cries. Tears mixed with dirt as he clung to the horse, mind scrambling for a way out but finding none. The Apache pressed on, each hoofbeat pulling him farther from hope, his body trembling in the grip of a waking nightmare. Moonlight barely lit the Apache camp as warriors' murmurs mixed with the fire's crackle. The 11-year-old boy shivered on a horse, wrists raw under tight rawhide. A warrior leaned close, his voice a harsh whisper. "Your family's dead, boy, burned with your village. The words crushed him, tears spilling down his dirt-caked cheeks, hope fading. He strained to see Willie as another group dragged his brother into the dark, but Willie vanished, leaving only hoofbeats. "Willie!" He choked, muffled by the gag, believing himself alone. At dawn, distant shouts of Texas Rangers echoed, and the Apache rode hard. Unknown to the boy, Willie's group faltered, their horses spent. A warrior cursed and shoved Willie off, the 8-year-old tumbling into thorns, arms scraped but silent. Willie crawled, heart racing, hiding as Rangers thundered past, mistaking him for Apache. He waited, then crept toward a road, driven to find home. The older brother, slumped against the horse, sobbed, unaware, as Carnavista snapped, "Quiet, or I'll cut your tongue." Warriors pressed on, ignoring his cries, and despair sank deeper, each mile burying his family further. He curled inward, eyes dull, the world a blur of dust and pain, his mind unable to grasp how to escape or if anyone he loved still lived. Cold seeped into the boy's bones as he lay face down, a heavy stone pinning him to the frozen ground. He whispered, "Ma, please," but the stars gave no answer, and loneliness choked him worse than the gag. "I just want to die," he mumbled, voice breaking, tears soaking the dirt. At dawn, Carnavista towered over him, eyes like flint, thrusting a slick piece of liver into his hands. "Eat, or I'll make you," he growled. The boy gagged at the smell, stomach twisting but forced it down, fearing another hit. Carnavista nodded, a flicker of approval, and cut his ropes for the day. Hands trembling, the boy kept the liver down, its bitter taste clinging. A young warrior sneered, "Weak white boy," kicking dirt at him. He stayed silent, staring at the fire, feeling like a shadow, belonging nowhere. Hunger gnawed, and when more meat came, he ate without pause, the act automatic. The warrior's laughter faded, their eyes shifting, as if his survival marked him anew. Fear lingered, but a stubborn spark grew. He'd endure, if only to spite them. "I'm still here," he muttered under his breath, sitting by the fire's glow, his body tense but unyielding, no longer flinching at Carnavista's shadow, his heart clutching a faint will to keep breathing. Dust swirled as Apache horses entered a sprawling village on the plains, hide tents dotting the horizon. Weak from days of riding, the boy was yanked from the horse, feet stinging on rough ground. Shouts and gunfire exploded, and he flinched, dragged to the village center where warriors danced, faces painted, voices howling. "Hold still!" A woman barked, pressing a hot iron to his earlobe, the pain searing as he screamed. A knife hacked his hair, strands falling, and a warrior's fist slammed his jaw, dropping him to his knees. Darkness swallowed him as he collapsed, the world a fading roar. He woke to soft hands wiping blood from his face. A woman, laughing eyes, smiling gently. "You're safe now," she whispered, cleaning his wounds and wrapping him in a blanket. His body throbbed, but her warmth steadied him, and he blinked at the quiet village. She led him to a spread of raw meat and flatbread on a hide. His stomach growled, but fear held him back, unsure of the cost. "Eat, little one," she urged, nodding. He reached out, heart pounding, sensing the village's eyes on him, knowing this choice would bind him to their world, a step into a life he couldn't yet understand. The boy stood trembling before a hide spread with raw meat and flatbread, the Apache village's eyes boring into him. His stomach growled, but fear locked his limbs, the memory of Carnavista's warning ringing in his ears. "Choose wrong, you die." He glanced at laughing eyes, her nod urging him on, but the meat's bloody sheen made his throat tighten. Hands shaking, he reached for the meat, heart hammering as he tore off a piece and shoved it into his mouth. The taste was foul, but he chewed fast, swallowing hard, and the warriors erupted in cheers, their claps echoing. "Enda!" Carnovista bellowed, slapping his shoulder, the name meaning white boy, sinking into him like a brand. Laughing Eyes pulled him close, her arms warm, whispering, "You're one of us now." Relief flooded him, but his chest still tightened, fear lingering beneath the acceptance. Carnovista pointed to a water jug and a pipe, barking, "Serve me." The boy scrambled to obey, spilling water in his haste, earning a grunt but no blow. He knelt by the fire, pipe in hand, his body tense but safer than before. "I did it," he muttered, barely audible, the cheers fading as he realized this choice tied him to the Apache, a step away from the boy he used to be, yet survival felt like a small victory. Days blurred into labor as the boy hauled water under the scorching sun, his shoulders aching from heavy jugs. Carnovista's pipe needed constant filling, and he fumbled the tobacco, earning sharp glares. At dusk, young Apache boys shoved him into a dirt ring, laughing as they wrestled him down, his face scraping the ground. "Get up, weakling!" One taunted, and he gritted his teeth, shoving back but collapsing under their weight. Laughing Eyes found him later, wiping dirt from his cheeks, her voice soft. "You're stronger than you know." She sat him by her tent, telling stories of Apache warriors, their courage stirring something in him. Her warmth felt like home, and he caught himself forgetting his mother's face, guilt twisting his gut. He mimicked words she taught, stumbling over Apache phrases, and Cheno, a wiry boy, chuckled, correcting him. One evening, he wrestled Cheno and pinned him, surprising everyone. "Not bad, Enda," Carnovista called, his nod heavy with approval. The boy's lips twitched into a smile, his first in weeks, warmth spreading through him. He sat by the fire, bruises fading, feeling a thread of belonging weave into his heart. The village's rhythm became his own, and though fear lingered, he began to see the Apache as more than captors, their world pulling him deeper, away from the life he once knew. Loneliness gripped the boy as he sat among the grazing horses, the vast plain stretching endlessly before him. Tears welled up and he whispered, "Ma, I'm sorry." The memory of his burning village, flashing vivid and raw. He couldn't stay here, not with strangers who'd stolen him. Wiping his face, he grabbed a water skin, heart racing, and swung onto a horse, urging it east toward where home might be. Hooves thundered, but a root snagged the horse's leg, sending it crashing. He tumbled into the dirt, breath knocked out, as shouts rang out. "Fool!" a warrior yelled, and hooves surrounded him, Apache riders closing in. They bound his wrists, dragging him back to camp, his knees scraping rocks. Carnovista's glare chilled him, and he braced for punishment. But Laughing Eyes rushed forward, pleading, "He's just a boy!" Her arms wrapped around him, and he buried his face in her shoulder, shame burning. Carnovista grunted, sparing him, but ordered him tied each night, the ropes tighter than before. By day, Cheno and other boys stayed close, their chatter easing his isolation. "You're one of us, Enda," Cheno said, tossing him a stick to play. The boy clutched it, his escape fading like a dream, and he nodded, sinking back into the village's rhythm, his will to flee crushed by the weight of his failure and their unexpected kindness. Sweat dripped from the boy's brow as he knelt beside Carnovista, watching the warrior carve a bow from cedar, his hands steady and precise. "Copy me, Enda," Carnovista grunted, tossing him a knife. The boy fumbled, nicking his finger, but kept working, binding gnarled wood with sinew. Next, Carnovista showed him how to stretch buffalo hide over a wooden frame for a shield, and before he could protest, a warrior fired an arrow at it. "Hold it up," Carnovista barked, heart pounding. The boy raised the shield, the arrow thudding inches from his face, and he stumbled back, unharmed but shaking. Cheno slapped his shoulder, grinning. "Not bad for a white boy." The praise warmed him, and he spent hours practicing, learning to guide a horse with only his knees, his legs aching but grip tightening. Laughing Eyes sat with him at dusk, her voice soft as she spoke of Apache warriors who hunted like ghosts. "You'll be like them," she said, her eyes gleaming. Inspired, he aimed his new bow at a sparrow, the arrow flying true, pinning it to a branch. Carnovista's nod was brief but heavy, and the boy's chest swelled. "I'm one of them," he whispered, clutching the bow, the village's rhythm pulsing in his veins. Each skill carved away his old self, and he stood taller, feeling less like a captive and more like Apache. Twilight cloaked the plains as Carnovista pointed at the boy, his voice firm. "You're with us, Enda. We hit the ranch tonight." The boy's stomach knotted, fear clawing at him, but he nodded, gripping his bow, knowing refusal wasn't an option. They rode silently, hooves muffled, until lanterns flickered at a distant farmhouse. As they crept closer, a dog barked, and a farmer's shout broke the night. "Run, Enda!" Carnovista hissed, shoving him forward. The boy sprinted across the field, heart slamming, drawing gunfire away from the group. Bullets whizzed past, one grazing his arm, and he dove behind a haystack, gasping. He waved his arms, shouting nonsense to keep the farmers chasing him, giving the Apache time to steal horses. When silence fell, he limped back, blood trickling, and found the group waiting, horses in tow. "Good warrior," Carnovista said, clapping his back. The word warrior lit a fire in him, but as they rode off, the boy's hands shook, the close call replaying in his mind. He glanced at the stolen horses, pride mixing with dread. "I didn't die," he muttered, wiping blood from his arm, the thrill of survival tainted by the faces of farmers he'd seen in the chaos. The village welcomed him as a fighter, but the weight of what he'd done pressed hard, anchoring him deeper into the Apache world. Stars glittered above as the boy crouched behind a tent during a raid, his breath catching when he saw Carnovista meet a white man in a dark coat. The man, John Carver, handed over rifles, his voice low. "More whiskey if you hit the next village hard." The boy's blood ran cold, the memory of his own village's flames flashing before him. He edged closer, heart racing, catching Carver's promise of payment for bloodshed. Shocked, he slipped away, but the truth gnawed at him. Carnovista was trading lives for weapons. At dawn, he pulled Cheno aside, whispering, "Why's Carnovista dealing with that white man?" Cheno's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. "Don't ask, Enda. You'll get us killed." The warning silenced him, but doubt festered. Later, Laughing Eyes found him staring at the fire, his face tight. "Stay with the tribe, little one," she urged, her hand on his shoulder. He nodded, but his mind churned, replaying Carver's words. "Something's wrong," he muttered, kicking a stone torn between loyalty and suspicion. The rifles gleamed in the camp, a reminder of the deal, and he felt a crack in the world he'd begun to trust. Keeping the secret, he watched Carnovista closely, his heart heavy with questions he didn't dare voice, the seeds of betrayal taking root in his young mind. Firelight danced across the Apache camp as the old medicine man, his face wrinkled and eyes sharp, pointed at the boy and sneered, "White boy doesn't belong here." The taunt stung, and the boy, now called Enda, clenched his fists, his cheeks burning under the village's gaze. The medicine man shoved him into a dirt circle, demanding a fight, and Enda swung wildly, his arms too thin to match the older man's strength. A blow to his chest sent him sprawling, gasping, but before the next strike landed, Carnovista stepped in, his voice booming, "Enough! He's mine." The medicine man's lips curled, jealousy flashing, and he stalked off, muttering curses. Later, whispers spread that Enda would betray the tribe, poisoning the air. Cheno, his friend, snapped at the other boys. "Enda's one of us!" But their glares didn't soften. Enda, heart pounding, knelt before Carnovista, voice trembling. "I'll never turn on you. Carnavista's eyes narrowed, but he nodded, saying, "Prove it. Lead a raid tomorrow." The boy swallowed hard, the weight of suspicion crushing him. He gripped his bow, resolve hardening despite his fear, knowing this task could kill him. The camp settled, but the medicine man's shadow loomed, and Enda lay awake, vowing to show his loyalty, even as doubt gnawed at him, the pressure to prove himself tightening like a noose. Hooves thundered as Enda rode with the Apache, his bow steady, arrows finding their mark in raid after raid. He moved like a shadow now, slipping through brush, earning nods from warriors who once mocked him. Chino, grinning, punched his arm after a hunt, saying, "You're faster than me now, Enda." The praise lit him up, and he laughed, the sound foreign but warm. Laughing Eyes called him to her tent, her hands stitching a deerskin shirt, and as she draped it over him, she whispered, "My son." His heart swelled, the word wrapping him like a blanket, and he barely noticed how his mother's face had faded from memory, Willie's voice a distant echo. He followed Carnavista like a son, craving his gruff approval, though fear lingered at the warrior's stern gaze. At a moonlit ceremony, warriors painted his face with red and black stripes, chanting his name. "I'm Apache," he murmured, stunned as drums pounded, his old life slipping away like smoke. He danced, feet sure, the village's rhythm his own, and for the first time he felt whole, no longer the scared boy stolen from a burning village. The paint marked him as one of them, and he stood tall, his past buried under the weight of his new identity, the plains his only home. 3 years passed, and the boy, now 14, stood taller, his shoulders broad from hauling water and wielding a bow. He spoke Apache fluently, words rolling off his tongue, while English felt like a forgotten dream. The village burned in his mind, a blurry scar, but his family's faces, Ma, Willie, Caroline, were gone, replaced by Carnavista's stern jaw and laughing eyes smile. Who was I before? He wondered once, but shook it off. The name Herman lost to him. He only answered to Enda now. At dusk, he joined warriors in a dance, leaping to drum beats, his body painted, sweat gleaming under the stars. Laughing Eyes sat by the fire, her stories of Apache ancestors weaving into his blood, and he nodded, saying, "This is my history." The village was his family, Carnavista his father, Chino his brother. He hunted with them, fought with them, his arrows swift and sure, no trace of the trembling child left. The plains stretched endless, and he ran through them free, his past a shadow he no longer chased. "I'm home," he said, voice steady as he sharpened his arrows, the Apache way his only truth. His old life erased by time and the tribe that claimed him, their bond stronger than the memories he'd lost. Dust choked the air as Enda rode with the Apache, their horses thundering toward a ranch under a fading sun. The raid was routine, stealing cattle, but a sharp crack split the night, and gunfire erupted from the shadows. "Rangers!" Chano shouted, and Enda's heart slammed as he kicked his horse into a gallop across the open field. Bullets whistled past, and his horse screamed, an arrow piercing its flank, collapsing and pinning him beneath its weight. Pain shot through his leg, and he gasped, trapped, as a Texas Ranger, Thomas P. Gillespie, loomed above, his rifle lowered. "He's white," Gillespie called, eyes wide, reaching down. Enda thrashed, panic surging, certain the ranger would kill him like an Apache. "Get away!" he spat, twisting against the horse's bulk. Gillespie hesitated, then barked at his men to chase the fleeing Apache, leaving Enda alone. Hooves faded, and Enda clawed at the dirt, shoving with all his strength to free himself. His leg burned, but he rolled clear, panting, the field silent except for his ragged breaths. He staggered to his feet, fear driving him to move, knowing the Rangers could return. The village was miles away, and he limped forward, each step a fight against pain and dread, determined to reach his only home. Grass scratched Enda's skin as he crawled through the field, heart pounding, the Rangers' shouts echoing too close. He burrowed into a thicket, holding his breath as boots crunched nearby. "Lost him!" a Ranger cursed, and Enda stayed still, sweat stinging his eyes, until their voices faded. Exhausted, he rose, his leg throbbing, and began a grueling trek across the plains, miles stretching endlessly under a merciless sun. Thirst clawed his throat, but he pushed on, guided by stars, collapsing only to rise again. Days later, he stumbled into the Apache camp, clothes torn, face gaunt. Warriors gaped, one whispering, "He's a ghost," as Enda swayed, barely standing. Carnovista rushed forward, gripping his shoulders, voice rough. "You came back, Enda." The warrior's rare embrace steadied him, and Carnovista declared him a petty chief, tasking him with leading a hunt. "Show them your strength," he said, eyes proud. Enda nodded, chest swelling, but as warriors clapped his back, he felt a pang of isolation. They'd left him under that horse, fleeing without a glance. "I did this alone," he muttered, gripping his bow, pride battling the ache of betrayal. The camp buzzed with his return, but he sat apart, the weight of survival heavy, knowing respect came at the cost of trust. Tension simmered in the village as the medicine man, his voice dripping venom, hissed to a group of warriors, "Enda's a white spy. He'll sell us out." The words reached Enda as he sharpened arrows, his stomach twisting, the accusation like a blade. Young warriors glared, refusing to join his hunt, one spitting, "Go back to your kind, outsider." Enda's fists clenched, but Chano stepped in, shoving the boy back. "He's more Apache than you." The argument drew a crowd, and Enda's cheeks burned under their stares. Carnovista's shadow fell over them, his voice cold. "Enda, prove you're ours. Bring back a deer by dawn." The challenge was a test, and Enda nodded, heart racing. Knowing failure could mean exile, he led a small group at dusk, tracking a deer through dense brush. His arrow flew true, piercing the animal's heart, and he hauled it back alone, dropping it at Carnovista's feet. "Good," the chief said, but the medicine man's glare didn't waver, his silence sharp with hate. Enda stood tall, saying, "I'm no traitor," but the weight of suspicion pressed harder. The village's trust felt fragile, and he gripped his bow, resolve firm but dread growing, aware that every step demanded he prove his place in a tribe that still saw his white skin. Stars barely pierced the night as Carnovista gathered his warriors, his gaze locking on Enda. "You lead the raid, Enda. We hit the soldiers' camp for horses," he said, voice heavy with expectation. Enda's stomach churned, knowing a military camp meant death if they failed. He nodded, throat tight, and huddled with Chino to plan, deciding to use darkness as cover. At midnight, they crept toward the camp, Enda's heart pounding as he signaled the group to fan out. They untied horses, hooves muffled, but a soldier's shout shattered the silence, and gunfire erupted. "Run!" Enda yelled, loosing an arrow that felled a soldier, buying time. The Apache scattered, but a warrior fell, blood pooling under him, his eyes lifeless. Enda's chest tightened, guilt surging as he led the others into the brush, arrows covering their escape. Back at camp, Carnovista clapped his shoulder, saying, "You're a true Apache." The praise felt hollow, the dead warrior's face haunting him. He sat by the fire, hands shaking, whispering, "Was it worth it?" The thrill of survival clashed with dread, and he questioned if this life, this tribe, was truly his. The village slept, but Enda's mind raced, torn between loyalty and the cost of bloodshed, his place among the Apache feeling fragile. Moonlight cast shadows as Enda lingered near the camp's edge. spotting Carnavista accepting a crate of whiskey from a white man in a long coat. He crept closer, heart-thumping, and heard the man, John Carver, murmur, "Wipe out the next village and you'll get rifles." The words hit like a stone, Enda's mind flashing to his own village, flames swallowing his father's body. He ducked behind a tent, breath shallow, as Carver's promise of weapons for slaughter sank in. Fear of discovery gripped him, and he froze when Cheno appeared, frowning. "What are you doing, Enda?" Cheno asked, voice low. "Just checking the horses," Enda lied, his voice unsteady, and Cheno shrugged, walking off. Alone, Enda's fists clenched, the truth about Carnavista's deals burning inside him. "He's selling lives," he muttered, staring at the crate. The camp was quiet, but his thoughts roared, urging him to find proof of Carver's scheme. He slipped back to his tent, resolve hardening despite the risk, knowing this secret could unravel the tribe's trust. The whiskey's stench lingered in the air, a reminder of betrayal, and Enda vowed to watch closer, his loyalty to the Apache cracking under the weight of what he'd heard. Dawn broke cold as Carnavista rallied the warriors, pointing to a distant village. "Burn it, Enda. No survivors," he ordered, eyes hard. Enda gripped his bow, dread pooling, but rode with the group, their torches ready. They struck at dusk, flames leaping as Enda fired arrows, setting roofs alight. A child's scream cut through the chaos, a girl fleeing, her braid swinging, and Enda froze, seeing his sister Caroline in her place. His hand faltered, arrow unloosed, and Carnavista roared, "Kill them all!" Enda raised his bow, heart racing, but shot into the sky, the arrow vanishing harmlessly. Cheno grabbed his arm, hissing, "Don't be soft, Enda," and pulled him toward the horses. As they fled, Enda spotted a scorched doll in the dirt, its button eyes staring. "What am I doing?" he whispered, guilt choking him. The village burned behind them, and though the Apache celebrated, Enda rode in silence, the girl's scream echoing in his mind. He clutched the doll hidden in his shirt, its weight heavier than any trophy. The raid's success meant nothing. He saw his own village in the flames, and the line between warrior and monster blurred, leaving him hollow, questioning the path he'd chosen. Sunday scorched the plains as soldiers' hoofbeats grew louder, forcing Carnavista's tribe from fertile hunting grounds. He led them to a barren valley, rocks crunching underfoot, the air thick with dust. "This is our stand," Carnavista said. But Enda saw hunger in the warriors' eyes, their hunts yielding only scraps. He and Cheno tracked deer for hours, returning with a single rabbit, their bows heavy with failure. Laughing Eyes coughed weakly by the fire, her face pale, and Enda's heart sank, offering her his share. The medicine man pointed at him, voice sharp, "Enda's curse starves us." The accusation stung, and warriors muttered, eyes narrowing. Carnavista silenced the man with a glare, saying, "Enda's loyal, you're not." The tension held, but Enda felt the tribe's doubt. He knelt by Laughing Eyes, whispering, "I'll find food, I swear." Her frail hand squeezed his, but his helplessness grew, the valley's desolation mirroring his fear for her. Hunts failed daily, and the medicine man's whispers spread, painting Enda as a blight. He sharpened his arrows, resolve wavering, the tribe's survival slipping through his fingers, and Laughing Eyes' fading strength drove him to hunt harder, desperate to prove the curse wrong. Night fell as a rival Apache band struck, their arrows slicing through Carnavista's camp. Enda leapt to his feet, bow in hand, firing at shadows to shield Laughing Eyes, who huddled by her tent. An arrow grazed his arm, blood dripping, but he stood firm, shouting, "Stay back!" as he drove off an attacker. Warriors fell, their groans filling the air, and the medicine man refused to treat them, spitting. "Let Enda's curse take them," Carnavista roared. "You'll heal them or leave." But the man smirked, unafraid. He turned to Enda, hissing, "You'll die by my curse, white boy." The threat chilled him, and Chano pulled him aside, whispering, "He's dangerous, Enda. Watch him." Enda nodded, but anger flared, urging him to confront the man. The camp reeled, tents torn, and warriors argued, some siding with the medicine man's lies. "I won't let him win," Enda muttered, checking his arrows, ready to fight for his place. Laughing Eyes' cough echoed, and he vowed to protect her, but the tribe's fractures deepened, distrust spreading like wildfire. The rival band retreated, but the medicine man's words lingered, and Enda felt the ground shift beneath him, danger closing in from within and without. Firelight flickered as whiskey loosened Carnavista's tongue, his voice slurring while warriors laughed around the camp. Enda sat nearby, sharpening an arrow, when Carnavista's words froze him. "That village we burned years ago, the white boy's home, Carver paid us to clear it for his land." Enda's blood ran cold, his father's bloodied body flashing in his mind. The truth, a gut punch, John Carver had orchestrated the massacre. He gripped the arrow, knuckles white, fighting to keep his face blank as Carnovista rambled, unaware of Enda's turmoil. Laughing Eyes glanced over, her brow creasing, and she touched his arm, whispering, "What's wrong, my son?" Enda shook his head, muttering, "Nothing," but his heart raced, rage boiling against both Carver and the Apache who'd followed his orders. Alone later, he paced by the tents, muttering, "I'll make Carver pay." The betrayal cut deep, shattering his trust in the tribe he'd fought for. He hid his anger, knowing Carnovista would kill him if he suspected defiance, but resolve hardened. Carver's scheme had stolen his family, and Enda swore to expose him, even if it meant risking everything. The camp slept, but Enda's mind burned, torn between loyalty and vengeance, his world fracturing under the weight of the truth. Drums pounded at the village festival, but the medicine man's voice sliced through the celebration, pointing at Enda. "This traitor will sell us to the whites." Enda's chest tightened, the crowd's eyes pinning him, and the medicine man shoved him into a dirt ring, spear raised. "Fight me, coward!" The man snarled, lunging, the blade grazing Enda's chest as he dodged, stumbling. Pain flared, but before the next strike, Carnovista roared, "Stop!" yanking the medicine man back. The old man's eyes blazed, spitting, "I'll kill you yet, white boy." Enda trembled, fear gripping him, but Cheno pulled him aside, whispering, "Leave camp tonight, Enda, before he tries again." Enda shook his head, voice firm. "I won't run. Laughing Eyes needs me." He tightened his grip on his bow, resolve outweighing terror, and spent the night sharpening arrows, preparing for a fight he couldn't avoid. The village buzzed with tension, warriors whispering about the clash, and Enda felt the medicine man's threat like a shadow, pushing him to prove his place. He stood by his tent, bow ready, heart pounding but unyielding, determined to face the man who'd branded him a traitor, no matter the cost. Sunrise lit the plains as Enda practiced archery, each arrow splitting branches, his focus razor-sharp to outmatch the medicine man. Cheno joined him, adjusting his stance, but worry creased his face. "He's dangerous, Enda," Cheno said, handing him a sharper arrow. Laughing Eyes found them, her voice soft but urgent. "Avoid this fight, my son." Enda shook his head, saying, "I have to end this." A young warrior approached, sneering. "The medicine man says you'll die tomorrow." The threat fueled Enda's determination, and he marched to Carnovista, bowing low. "Let me fight him openly," he pleaded. Carnovista's eyes narrowed, then he nodded, voice stern. "Win, or you're dead." The weight of the challenge crushed Enda, but he returned to his tent, stringing his bow tighter, hands steady despite the fear gnawing inside. He visualized the fight, each move, refusing to let the medicine man's curse haunt him. The village whispered of the coming duel, and Enda sat by the fire, arrows at his side, his heart set on victory. Protecting Laughing Eyes and Chano drove him, and he murmured, "I won't lose." The pressure forging his resolve into something unbreakable, ready to face death to keep his place. Cheers erupted as Enda faced the medicine man in the village circle, the crowd's roars shaking the air. The old man thrust his spear, its tip flashing, and Enda dove aside, the blade slicing his arm, blood dripping. He staggered, but loosed an arrow, striking the medicine man's shoulder. "You can't kill me," the man roared, charging again, spear aimed at Enda's heart. Enda fell, breath short, but Carnavista's shout cut through. "Finish him, Enda!" Scrambling up, Enda knocked another arrow, his hand steady, and fired, the shaft piercing the medicine man's chest. The man collapsed, lifeless, and the crowd roared, but some warriors glared, their eyes promising vengeance. Enda stood, trembling, blood and sweat mixing, whispering, "It's done." The victory felt heavy, the medicine man's death tying him to enemies among rival Apache bands. Chano gripped his arm, saying, "You're alive, brother." But Enda saw fear in his friend's eyes. The village hailed him, but he felt the rift, his triumph sowing seeds of danger. He cleaned his wound, the pain grounding him, aware that killing the medicine man had secured his place but painted a target on his back, the cost of survival steeper than ever. Silence followed the fight, broken only by Carnavista's voice as he pulled Enda aside. "You're strong, but they'll come for you now." The warning chilled him. Rival Apache bands known for their brutality, and Enda nodded, hiding his fear. Laughing Eyes rushed to him, tears streaming, and hugged him tightly, sobbing, "Why must you fight, my son?" Her fear pierced him, and he held her, whispering, "I had to." Cheno joined them, voice low. "Those bands won't forgive this, Enda. They're cruel." A strange warrior approached later, hissing, "You'll pay for his blood," before vanishing into the dark. Enda's stomach knotted, but he squared his shoulders, saying, "I'm not afraid," though his voice shook. Carnavista summoned him at dawn, ordering, "Lead a hunt. Show them you're Apache." Enda agreed, bow in hand, but worry gnawed at him, the threat of retaliation looming. He checked his arrows, each one a lifeline, and joined the hunters, their silence heavy with doubt. The camp watched, and Enda felt the pressure to prove his loyalty again, the medicine man's death a chain binding him to a cycle of danger. He stepped into the plains, determined but wary, knowing every hunt, every day, was now a fight to survive the enemies he'd made. Screams and clashing steel filled the night as a rival Apache band ambushed the camp, their arrows cutting through the dark. Enda fired back, his bow steady, but a warrior charged him, spear gleaming. He dodged, heart pounding, when Carnavista leapt in, shoving him aside. "Stay back, Enda!" the chief roared, but a spear pierced his chest, blood spraying as he fell. Enda's scream tore free, raw and broken, as he knocked an arrow and shot, the attacker collapsing dead. Too late, Carnavista lay still, his eyes empty. Warriors rallied, driving off the enemy, and some cheered Enda's shot, but others hissed, "You brought this!" as the rival band vowed vengeance. Laughing Eyes clutched Enda, tears streaming, begging, "Run, my son, before they kill you." He held her tightly, voice cracking, "I'll live for you." Grief choked him. Carnavista's death like losing a father, but danger loomed. The camp mourned, and Enda gathered a knife and water skin, knowing he couldn't stay. He kissed Laughing Eyes' forehead, her sobs echoing, and slipped into the night, driven by her plea and his promise. The plains swallowed him, his heart heavy with loss, the weight of survival pushing him toward an uncertain escape. Hooves thundered as Enda spurred his horse into a desolate canyon, the wind howling through jagged cliffs. He dismounted, legs shaking, and found a cave, rolling stones to block the entrance, his breath ragged. Apache trackers' shouts echoed faintly, their torches flickering as they scoured the canyon, passing inches from his hiding spot. He held still, whispering, "I'll make it for you, Laughing Eyes," her plea fueling him. Days bled into weeks, and he hunted rabbits with snares, sipping from a trickling stream, his body leaner but alive. At night he carved Carnavista's face into a rock, murmuring, "I won't forget you," the act grounding him against loneliness. Months stretched, 8 in all, and the tracker's visits dwindled, but isolation gnawed. "I can't stay here forever," he said, voice hoarse, resolve stirring. He checked his knife, the cave's walls closing in, and decided to leave, driven by a need for allies. The canyon had kept him safe, but it wasn't life-only survival. He saddled his horse, heart steady despite the ache of solitude, and rode out, the vast plains calling him to a new path, alone but unbroken. Moonlight silvered the northern plains as Enda guided his horse through Comanche territory, his eyes scanning for signs. He spotted hoofprints and a feather caught in a bush, proof of a nearby camp, and his pulse quickened. He reined in, doubt gripping him, join the Comanche or keep running. Carnavista's voice echoed in his mind. Find stronger allies. The words tipped the scale, and he urged his horse forward, whispering, "This is my chance." He hid his bow, keeping only a knife to signal peace, his hands steady despite fear. Under a full moon, a fire's glow flickered ahead, laughter drifting from a Comanche camp. "They could kill me," he muttered, but pushed on, drawn by the hope of belonging. He dismounted, tying his horse, and crept closer, the firelight warming his face. The camp's joy felt foreign after months alone, and he stood at the edge, heart pounding, ready to step into the unknown. The Comanche were his last hope, and he braced himself, knowing one wrong move could end him, but the need for a new home drove him forward. Darkness cloaked the Comanche camp as Enda slipped past tents, the fire's glow casting shadows of laughing warriors. His heart hammered, but he stepped into the light, hands raised, voice steady. "I come in peace." The warriors froze, then scattered, shouting, mistaking him for an enemy. Chaos erupted, and Enda stood firm, palms open, as spears glinted. A young warrior, eyes narrowed, approached, speaking, halting, Apache. "Who are you?" Enda knelt, recounting his village's destruction, his years with the Apache, and his flight from danger, his voice raw but clear. "I have no tribe now," he said, head bowed. The warriors murmured, weapons lowering, when a tall figure emerged, Quanah Parker, his presence commanding. "I know you," Quanah said, recalling Enda from a long-ago horse race. The recognition stilled the camp, and Enda's breath caught, hope flickering. Quanah studied him, then nodded, saying, "Speak your heart." Enda's words poured out, a plea for a new start, and the fire's warmth felt like a promise. The Comanche listened, their silence heavy but open, and Enda stood, vulnerable but resolute, his fate hanging on Quanah's next words, a chance at belonging within reach. Starlight bathed the camp as Enda knelt before Quanah Parker, his voice steady despite trembling knees. "Let me be Comanche. I'll fight for you." He spoke of Carnavista's loyalty, his own battles, and the pain of losing his Apache family, his eyes locked on Quanah's. The chief's gaze pierced him, and he asked, "Will you kill whites for us?" Enda nodded, saying, "I'll protect this tribe with my life," his vow fierce. Quanah's lips curved, and he declared, "You are Montachina, the brave one." The name sank into Enda, a new skin, and warriors cheered, their voices lifting him. Quanah offered him roasted deer, the meat warm and rich, and Enda ate, the camp's laughter wrapping him like a blanket. He followed a warrior to a tent, collapsing onto a hide, the first safe sleep in months. "I'm home," he whispered, the word foreign but true. The Comanche's fire glowed outside, and he felt a spark of belonging, the weight of his past easing. Montakina, no longer Enda, drifted off, the tribe's rhythm soothing his scars, his heart daring to hope for a future where he wasn't alone. The plains his new anchor. Dawn painted the plains as Montachina crouched low, tracking a deer with his bow, his arrow faster than any Apache shot. The Comanche warriors nodded, impressed, and a young fighter, Tano, clapped his back, grinning, "You're our brother now." The words warmed Montachina's chest, and he laughed, the sound blending with theirs, a bond he hadn't felt since Chino. Quanah called him to ride, teaching him to charge on horseback, weaving through brush like a hawk, while sharing tales of Comanche ancestors who defied empires. "You carry their spirit," Quanah said, his voice steady. At night, Montachina joined the warrior dance, drums pounding, his feet sure as he leaped, pride swelling. The faces of his white family ma, Willie faded to nothing, and he looked to Quanah, seeing a father's strength. But Tano's warning chilled him. "The Americans are closing in, Montachina." Fear flickered, but he shoved it down, swearing, "I'll die for this tribe." The camp's fire burned bright, and he stood taller, the Comanche way seeping into his bones, his old life a shadow he no longer sought. He sharpened his arrows, ready to fight. The plains, his home, the tribe, his blood. Hooves thundered as Montachina rode with the Comanche, striking a white settlement for horses under a moonless sky. His arrows flew true, pinning a guard, and he shouted, "Go!" as the group grabbed reins, dodging bullets from waking soldiers. A man's face caught his ayatol, familiar. Like Willie, but he shook it off, heart racing, leading the escape through a gully. "You're a warrior, Montachina," Quanah called, his praise sharp and proud. Back at camp, Montachina found a scrap of cloth among the loot, blue like his mother's dress, and his breath hitched, a strange ache stirring. He stuffed it in his pouch, muttering, "It's nothing," afraid weakness would show. Tano glanced over, frowning, but said nothing, and Montachina turned away, jaw tight. "This is my home," he told himself, gripping his bow, willing the Comanche life to drown out the flicker of memory. The stolen horses snorted, and he focused on them, pushing down the unease, but the cloth's weight lingered, a crack in his certainty. The camp celebrated, but he sat apart, the rage thrill fading, his mind wrestling with a past he thought he'd buried, the plains no longer enough to silence it. Dust swirled as American soldiers herded the Comanche to Fort Sill, their rifles glinting under a harsh sun. Montachina walked among the tents, feeling caged, the soldiers' patrols a constant shadow. Quanah gathered the tribe, voice calm but heavy. "We surrender to survive." Montachina's fists clenched, and he snapped, "We should fight." But Quanah's hand on his shoulder stilled him, saying, "Patience, Montachina. We'll find a way." The words didn't soothe him, and he wandered the camp, unease growing as white settlers passed, their faces alien. A woman stared at him, her eyes searching, and his stomach twisted, a vague memory stirring. "Who is she?" he muttered, ducking into his tent, heart pounding. The camp felt like a trap, and he clutched his knife, fear of his past creeping in like a thief. Soldiers barked orders outside, and he sat in the dark, wrestling with Quanah's call for peace, his warrior's blood urging him to resist. The woman's gaze haunted him, a pull he couldn't name, and he buried his face in his hands. The Comanche life he loved, clashing with something older, threatening to unravel the man he'd become. Sunset cast long shadows as Montachina sharpened his arrows, pausing when he spotted John Carver, the white trader, slipping rifles to an Apache chief. He crept closer, hearing Carver's low voice, "Hit the Comanche, and you'll get more guns." The betrayal reignited his rage, his village's flames flashing in his mind, and he clenched his fists, knowing Carver's schemes fueled the wars. He found Quanah, whispering, "Carvers, arming our enemies." Quanah's eyes darkened, nodding. "I've watched him too." The chief planned to work with Texas Rangers, and Montachina's heart raced, tasked with trailing Carver. "Stay hidden," Quanah warned, and Montachina nodded, slipping into the shadows, fear of discovery sharp. "He ruined my family," he muttered, the memory of his father's blood driving him. The camp bustled, but he moved unseen, tracking Carver's every step, resolve hardening. Quanah's trust anchored him, and he vowed to expose the traitor, no matter the risk. The rifle's gleam fueled his anger, and he gripped his knife, ready to unravel Carver's web, the first step toward justice for the village he'd lost. Morning light filtered through the camp when a white woman approached Montachina, her voice trembling. "Herman, my son!" He froze, her face a stranger's, and backed away, heart pounding, thinking, "She's lying." He bolted into the woods, branches snapping, her cries fading. Quanah found him, voice calm. "She's your mother, Montachina. She searched for you." The words stunned him, and he shook his head, saying, "I'm Comanche, not her son." Quanah shared her story, years of seeking a lost boy, and Montachina's mind flickered, a woman's lullaby echoing faintly. Doubt crept in, and he muttered, "What if she's real?" Quanah urged him to meet her, but he resisted, fear of losing his Comanche life gripping him. Finally, he agreed, saying, "I'll see her, but I'm not hers." He followed Quanah back, keeping distance, his eyes on the woman's hopeful face, her presence stirring a past he'd buried. The camp watched, and he stood rigid, torn between the tribe he loved and a stranger's claim, his heart wrestling with a truth he wasn't ready to face. Sunlight filtered through the Fort Sill camp as Montachina faced the white woman, claiming to be his mother, her eyes wet with hope. His own gaze was cold, arms crossed, feeling nothing but suspicion. She stepped forward, sobbing, "Herman, I've looked for you every day," and wrapped him in a hug, her tears soaking his shirt. He stiffened, pushing her away, voice sharp. "I'm Montachina, Comanche. You're not my mother." She gasped, but before she could speak, a young man, Willie, appeared, saying, "We were taken together, Herman. Don't you remember?" The words stirred nothing, and Montachina shook his head, frustrated. The woman pointed to a scar on his arm, her voice soft. "Caroline caught you playing. Years ago." He touched the scar, a flicker of familiarity sparking, but doubt held firm. "You're wrong," he muttered, heart racing, and bolted from the tent, feet pounding the dirt. The camp's noise faded as he hid behind a tree, chest heaving, torn between the Comanche life he knew and a past he couldn't grasp. Her touch lingered, unsettling, and he whispered, "Who am I?" The question gnawed, his identity fracturing, unable to face the woman or the memories threatening to pull him apart. Dusk settled over the woods as Quanah found Montachina, sitting on a log, staring at the ground. "You can't run from family," Quanah said, voice steady, kneeling beside him. Montachina's jaw tightened and he snapped, "The Comanche are my family." Quanah nodded, sharing his own story. "My mother was white, taken like you, but chose us. You can live both ways." The words hit hard, and Montachina's mind flashed to Carnavista's strength, laughing eyes' warmth, making him ache with guilt at the thought of leaving. "You'll always be my son," Quanah said, hand on his shoulder. "But see her." Montachina's eyes stung, torn between loyalty and curiosity, whispering, "What if I lose you?" Quanah's smile was firm, promising a bond unbroken. Reluctantly, Montachina nodded, saying, "I'll go back, but I'm not hers." He stood, heart heavy, the idea of two worlds both hopeful and terrifying. Quanah walked with him, a steady presence, and Montachina felt a spark of courage, ready to face the woman again, Though fear of losing his Comanche life clung like a shadow, his steps slow but resolute. Night cloaked Fort Sill as Montachina and Quanah trailed John Carver, slipping past tents to watch him barter. Carver handed rifles to a group of Apache, his voice low, "Strike the Comanche hard." Montachina's blood boiled, and he crept closer, spotting a letter in Carver's bag. Heart-pounding, he snatched it, the paper detailing an attack, and sprinted back, dodging a guard's glance. "Look at this," he whispered, handing it to Quanah, who scanned it, eyes narrowing. Quanah met Thomas P. Gillespie, a Texas Ranger, passing the letter, and Gillespie nodded, saying, "We'll get him." Montachina hid in Quanah's tent, fear gripping him, imagining Carver's men finding him. "He killed my family," he muttered, the village's flames vivid in his mind, fueling his resolve. Quanah clasped his arm, promising, "You're safe with me." The camp slept, but Montachina stayed awake, knife in hand, tracking Carver's shadow, his mission clear. The letter was a step toward justice, and he clung to it, heart set on ending Carver's schemes, the weight of his past, driving him to risk everything for the truth. Moonlight bathed the camp as Montachina slipped into Carver's tent, knife gleaming, his voice a hiss. "You destroyed my village." Carver smirked, lounging on a cot, saying, "You're just an Apache dog, boy. You won't kill me." Rage surged, and Montachina pressed the blade closer, demanding, "Admit it." Carver laughed, then admitted, "I paid them to burn it for land," but added, "Cross me, and you're dead." Before Montachina could act, Quanah and Gillespie burst in, rifles raised, and Gillespie snapped, "You're done, Carver." They bound him, and Montachina's hands shook, relief flooding as justice loomed. He stepped back, heart racing, and Quanah pulled him close, saying, "You did right, Montachina." The words grounded him, and he nodded, whispering, "For my father." Carver's glare burned, but Montachina stood tall, the weight of years lifting. The tent emptied, and he followed Quanah, the night air cool, feeling the village's loss avenged. His resolve hardened, knowing Carver's arrest was his victory, a step toward healing, though the scars of his past remained, etched deep in his soul. Chaos erupted as Apache loyal to Carver stormed Fort Sill, arrows flying through the dawn. Montachina grabbed his bow, firing to shield Quanah and the white woman, his mother, as tents burned. He ducked a spear, shouting, "Get back!" when a frail figure staggered forward, laughing eyes, alive but bloodied, her arm gashed. "My son," she gasped, hugging him. "I'm proud." Before he could speak, she collapsed, her breath stopping, and Montachina screamed, cradling her, tears falling. "No!" he sobbed, her death ripping through him, another mother lost. Quanah rallied the Comanche, driving the attackers back, and Montachina fired arrows, rage fueling each shot. The Apache fled, and he knelt by laughing eyes, whispering, "I'll keep fighting." Quanah's hand gripped his shoulder, steadying him, and Montachina stood, vowing, "I'll protect them all." The camp smoldered, and he looked to his mother, safe but distant, her presence a reminder of his fractured life. Grief for laughing eyes burned, but he clutched his bow, resolve unbroken, ready to guard his new family Comanche, and white against any threat, the weight of loss forging his strength. Afternoon light spilled into the tent as the woman, Montachina's mother, hummed a soft lullaby, her voice trembling. The notes hit him like a wave, and he froze, memories of nights curled by her side flooding back, her song a shield against the dark. "You sang that?" he whispered, eyes wide, heart racing. Willie sat beside him grinning and said, "Remember when we raced sticks in the creek?" Montachina chuckled, the image vivid, his first laugh in years. Caroline stepped in, touching his arm, her voice soft. "I'm sorry for this scar, Herman." The name stirred him, and he traced the mark, emotion welling. "I'm still Montachina," he said, testing English, the words clumsy but familiar. He let his mother hug him, her warmth tugging at buried feelings, but added, I need the Comanche too. She nodded, tears falling, promising, stay as long as you want, no pressure. He agreed to a few days, saying, just a little while. The tent felt smaller, memories creeping in, and he sat, torn between the boy he was and the warrior he'd become. His past no longer a shadow, but a fragile bridge he dared to cross. Dust settled as Thomas P. Gillespie rode into Fort Sill, his voice firm. Carver's trial starts soon, Montachina. We need you. Montachina's heart pounded, and he followed the ranger to a stockade, facing John Carver behind bars. You're a savage, boy, Carver sneered, but Montachina stood tall, recounting the village massacre, his voice steady. You paid to kill my family. The words silenced Carver, his smirk fading, and Montachina felt justice near, his father's death avenged. Gillespie clapped his shoulder, saying, he'll pay, thanks to you. Montachina nodded, relief washing over him, but Carver's taunt echoed, stinging. He walked back to camp, head high, whispering, it's done, Pa. The weight of years lifted, and he sat by Quanah's tent, the trial's promise easing his scars. Gillespie's gratitude lingered, and Montachina felt a quiet strength, knowing he'd struck back at the man who'd torn his world apart. The camp buzzed, but he was still. The fight for truth won, his resolve now turning to the family waiting nearby. Twilight blanketed the camp as Montachina sat alone, fingers tracing his bow, memories of Carnavista's gruff voice, laughing eyes' warmth, and Quanah's steady gaze swirling. Where do I belong? He muttered, the question heavy, his heart split between Comanche fires and the white family's tentative smiles. Willie found him, sitting close, saying, you don't have to pick, Herman. Be you. The words echoed Quanah's wisdom. Live both worlds, and Montachina's breath caught, a path opening. I can do that, he said. Voice soft, the idea settling like rain. He pulled out a knife and carved an arrow. One half Apache notches, the other Comanche curves, a symbol of his dual heart. He held it up, moonlight glinting, and smiled, whispering, this is me. Peace settled, the first in years, and he stood, lighter, no longer torn. The camp slept, but he felt awake, his identity no longer a battle but a balance. The plains and the village both his to claim. Morning sun warmed Loyal Valley as Quanah rode in, a beaded pouch in hand, his voice warm. For you, Montachina. He hugged Montachina tightly, the name a bond, and they sat, Quanah sharing plans to fight for Comanche rights. I'll help, Montachina vowed, his white family nearby, but his heart still with the tribe. Quanah handed him a necklace, eagle feathers swaying, saying, you're always ours. The gift anchored him, and he nodded, feeling whole, both worlds his. I'm here and there, he said, smiling, the words true. Quanah mounted his horse, promising, come when you're ready. Montachina watched him ride off, the necklace warm against his chest, his connection to the Comanche unbreakable. He turned to his mother, her smile soft, and felt a bridge between his lives, no longer forced to choose. The village stirred, and he walked forward, carrying Quanah's gift, his heart steady, rooted in both the plains and the home he was learning to know. Laughter filled Loyal Valley as the village held a festival, children tugging Montachina to teach them archery. He strung a small bow, guiding their hands, their cheers sparking a grin. You're good, a boy shouted, and Montachina laughed, surprised by their warmth. A man who'd once scoffed approached, offering a carved knife, saying, I was wrong about you. His mother stood nearby, beaming, and told the crowd, I never stopped looking for my Herman. The villagers gasped, clapping, calling him their hero, and Montachina's throat tightened, belonging settling in. "I've got stories," he said, sharing Comanche tales, the crowd leaning in, united. He smiled, the knife in his hand, feeling the village's embrace. No longer an outsider. The festival glowed with lanterns, and he stood among them, heart full, the plains call still strong, but this new home real. He looked to his family, their faces bright, and knew he'd found a place, his stories weaving the Comanche and Loyal Valley together, his life a tapestry of both. Sunlight spilled across the Loyal Valley fields as Montachina, now Herman, hoed rows beside his mother, Willie and Caroline, their laughter mixing with the rustle of wheat. He paused, wiping sweat, and shared a Comanche tale of a lone wolf, his voice steady, making Willie chuckle and Caroline clap. "Tell another," she urged, and Herman grinned, feeling their warmth. His mother began a lullaby, the same one from his childhood, and he joined in, voice soft, eyes misty as memories of her singing him to sleep surfaced. Willie nudged him, pointing to a sturdy horse tied nearby, saying, "Picked it for you, Herman. Looks like one of your Apache ones." The gift caught him off guard, and he ran his hand along the horse's flank, heart full. Caroline handed him a shirt, stitched with settler cloth but adorned with Comanche beads, whispering, "For both of you." He pulled it on, the fit perfect, and hugged her, saying, "I'm here." Quanah's face flashed in his mind, but the family's closeness anchored him. "I'll keep you safe," he promised, gripping the hoe like a bow, his vow echoing the warrior he'd been, now rooted in this new home, their bond a strength he'd fight for. Golden light bathed Loyal Valley as Herman worked the fields, his mother's voice calling him to lunch. He kept his bow nearby, teaching village kids to shoot arrows, their cheers making him smile. One day, he traced the scar on his arm, Caroline's old cut, and whispered, "I'm Herman Lehman," the name settling like truth. Word came that John Carver was convicted, his schemes exposed by Quanah and Texas Rangers, and Herman nodded, justice sealing his past's wounds. He rode to Fort Sill often, welcomed as Montachina, Quanah's hand on his shoulder saying, "You're always Comanche." Conovista's sacrifice and Laughing Eye's love lingered, teaching him to cherish both families, his dual identity a hard-won gift. "I've got two homes," he said, standing on the hill, bow in hand, gazing at the plains and the village below. The wind carried his words, and he smiled, peace deep in his bones, knowing he belonged to both worlds. The fields stretched wide, his family's laughter echoing, and Herman walked forward, whole, carrying the strength of the boy who survived and the warrior who found his way home, a life woven from loss, love, and unbreakable ties.